Are we reading the?
I'm going to start all over again. Hello, friends. Welcome to the United Lodge of Theosophists for Washington, D.C. We meet here at Google Meet at 11 a.m. every Sunday. On September 4, the first Sunday of the month, we presented a talk on the importance of why we meditate. Today's talk is on the culture of concentration. Proper concentration being a necessity for successful meditation. Next Sunday at 11 a.m., we'll be at the ULTDC platform and here on Google Meet as well for a talk on the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is announced in our newly issued program for October through December. We hope to see you next Sunday in person or virtually. For more information, comments, and questions, please contact phone number 301-656-3566 or www.ultdc.org or ultdclodge@gmail.com or at the United Lodge of Theosophists, 9850 Flint Rock Road, Manassas, Virginia, 20112. We're going to now hear the declaration from two fellow students and followed from the declaration from two fellow students will present the declaration and then the devotional reading followed by main talk for the day.
The Declaration of the United Lodge of Theosophists is as follows. The policy of the Lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It's loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification and practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves, by study and otherwise, to be the better able to help and teach others. It is said that the true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all.
The devotional reading today is from chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, a dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna. Among those of thy devotees who always thus worship thee, which take the better way, those who worship the indivisible and unmanifested, or those who serve thee as thou now art? Krishna responds, those who worship me with constant zeal, with the highest faith and minds placed on me, are held in high esteem by me, by those who with minds equal towards everything, with senses and organs restrained, and rejoicing in the good of all creatures, meditate on the inexhaustible, immovable, highest, incorruptible, difficult to contemplate, invisible, omnipresent, unthinkable, the witness and demonstrable shall also come unto me. For those whose hearts are fixed on the unmanifested, the labor is greater, because the path which is not manifest is with difficulty attained by corporeal beings. But for those who worship me, renouncing in me all their actions, regarding me as the supreme goal and meditating on me alone, if their thoughts are turned to me, O son of Prita, I presently become the savior from this ocean of incarnation and death. Place then thy heart on me, penetrate me with thy understanding, and thou shalt without that doubt hereafter dwell in me. But if thou shouldst be unable at once steadfastly to fix thy heart and mind on me, strive then, O Dan and Jaya, to find me by constant practice in devotion. If after constant practice thou art still unable, follow me by actions performed for me, for by doing works for me thou shalt attain perfection. But if thou art unequal even to this, then, being self restrained, place all thy works, failures, and successes alike on me, abandoning in me the fruit of every action. For knowledge is better than constant practice. Meditation is superior to knowledge. Renunciation of the fruit of action to meditation. Final emancipation immediately results from such renunciation.
Thank you. Let me share my screen first. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, friends, and welcome to the talk on the culture of concentration. Earlier this month, we had heard an insightful talk on meditation, the benefits of meditation, and the means to attaining a truly meditative state. One of the means of preparing the meditation for meditation is known in theosophical circles as concentration. So before we dive into the topic, let's take a look at the term concentration as commonly defined. So common definition of concentration is the action or power of focusing all one's attention on a particular endeavor. It can be your task, your work, music, math, or any topic you're interested in. And Hindus typically call this as one-pointedness. So this is the general definition of concentration. But from the theosophical point of view, this term is more refined. And here's what Mr. Judge says. The term is concentration. In the Indian books, it's called yoga. This is translated also as a union, meaning a union with the Supreme Being, or as it is otherwise put, the object of spiritual knowledge is the Supreme Being. And Mr. Judge goes on to say that there must be in us a power of discernment, the cultivation of which will enable us to know whatever is desired to be known. That there is such a power is affirmed by teachers of occultism, and the way to acquire it is by cultivating concentration. And then a voice of silence takes it further and says that the intense and perfect concentration of the mind upon one interior object, accompanied by complete abstraction from everything pertaining to the external universe or the world of senses. And then Patanjali, in his famous verse 2, says that concentration or yoga is a hindrance of the modification of thinking principle. So what we have here is the what and how. What is concentration according to Theosophy, and how are we going to attain that? So before we go further in concentration, it helps to distinguish between these three terms that are commonly used: concentration, contemplation, and meditation, also called as dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. The Theosophy teaches that emancipation from personal existence or conditioned existence is pursued in three stages or three aspects: concentration, contemplation, and meditation. These are not necessarily isolated from one another, but each leads to the next. So concentration or dharana as can be defined as restraining our lower tendencies and focusing our whole attention on a noble idea or object such as the higher self. It starts with removal of mental obstacles such as ill will, sense delights, doubts, etc. The wandering mind has to be subdued first and placed back on the interior object of concentration. And here's Krishna says in the Gita, to whatsoever object the inconsistent mind goeth out, he should subdue it, bring it back, and place it upon the spirit. Contemplation or dhyana is a continuance of concentration and maintaining of the single higher idea without drifting. It leads to a deeper understanding of one's own self, not being different from other selves. Dhyana is also called yoga, where the mind is free from all external thoughts and desires. And here's what Damodar Mavalankar, who was a disciple of the Master, says on contemplation, that just as the physical body requires incessant attention to prevent the entrance of a disease, or also the inner man, so also the inner man requires an unremitting watch, so that no conscious or unconscious thought may attract atoms unsuited to its progress. This is the real meaning of contemplation, and the prime factor as a guidance is thought as well. Without that, all else is useless. And to be efficient for purpose, it must be not only a passing resolution of the moment, a single fierce desire of short duration, but a settled and continued strain as nearly as can be continued and concentrated without one single moment remission. Meditation or samadhi is the loss of feeling of individuality where the perceiver, the perceived, and the perception are all merged into one. While we may while we may take many lives to attain such a complete meditative state, just the practice of meditation leads to inner peace, goodwill towards all our fellows and creatures. It makes us more loving and compassionate and produces joy in seeing happiness in others. So, in essence, concentration, contemplation, and meditation are not two distinct, but a part of the whole process of freeing ourselves from personal existence. So, Mr. Judge also states that true practice is Raja Yoga. True concentration, Raja Yoga. It discards these physical motions, postures, and recipes relating solely to the present personality and directs our student to virtue and altruism as a basis of which to start. And this is really important for us to pay attention to because too often yoga is misunderstood as something relating to a physical posture or an emotion. But as Mr. Judd says, that uh, it's focusing on interior object and to cultivate virtue and altruism. That is the starting point of concentration. This is more often rejected than accepted, Mr. Judd says. So much so has been said for the last 1800 years in several aspects of magical books that students without a guide attracted to these subjects ask for information and seek in vain for the entrance to the temple of the learning they crave because they say that virtues rules are meant for babes in Sunday schools but not for them. And in consequence, we find hundreds of books in all the languages of Europe and elsewhere dealing with rites, ceremonies, invocations, and other obscurities which will lead to nothing but loss of time and money. But few of these authors have anything save mere eye knowledge. It's true that they sometimes have a reputation, but it's only that accorded to an ignoramus by those who are more ignorant. The so-called great man, knowing how fatal to reputation it would be to really tell how small is his practical knowledge, writes about projections and elementals, but discreetly keeps his readers from a paucity of his acquirements. But it may be asked if the culture of concentration will succeed alone by the practice of virtue. Let the seeker know once and for all that virtues cannot be discarded or ignored. They must be made a part of our life, and the philosophical basis must be understood. We must make up our minds of a life to constant work upon this line. The lazy ones are they who ask for pleasure may as well give up at the threshold and be contented with the pleasure paths marked out for those who fear God and honor the King. Immense fields of investigation and experiment have to be traversed. And the only way in which we can gain the will and the power to thus seize and hold is by acquiring the virtues on one hand and minutely understanding ourselves on the other. Someday we will begin to see why not one passing thought may be ignored, not one fleeting impression missed. This we perceive is no simple task, but is a gigantic work. So Mr. Crosby, in one of his talks in the early 19th century, early 20th century, strove to point out that it's important to understand man's real nature first. Here's what he said. Mr. Crosby, in his lecture on concentration, offers this advice. We have first to understand what man is, his real nature, what the cause of his present condition, before we can arrive at any pure and true concentration, before we can use the higher mind and the powers that flow from it. For the powers that we use in the body are transmitted powers, drawn indeed from our inner spiritual nature, but so disturbed and limited that they are not powerful. We need to know about our minds, and we need to control our minds, that is, the lower mind, occupied with personal and physical things, known in Theosophy phraseology as lower manas. It is the organ, the thinking principle, which is the ancients said is a greater producer of the illusion, the great distractor of concentration, for there is no possibility of obtaining real concentration until the possessor of the mind can place it where he will, when he will, and for as long as he wishes. It is written in the voice of the silence that mind is a great slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. The disciple, who is a real man, the spiritual man, has to act as such. He has to stop the switchings and fittings of his thinking principle and become calm in that knowledge to which the consideration of his own true nature brings him. The object of all advancement is the realization of the true nature of each one and an employment of the powers which belong to it. What hinders is the thinking principle. We are the thinkers, but we are not what we think. If we think wrongly, then all the results of our thoughts and actions must lead to a wrong conclusion or to a partial one at best. But if you realize that we are the thinker, the creator, the evolver of all the conditions through which we have been, in which we now are, and in which we shall find ourselves in the future, we have then reached the point of view of the real man, and it is only the real man that the power of concentration belongs. Again, in order to obtain concentration, we need an understanding of the classification of the principles of man. We all have the same principles, the same kind of substance within us, the same spirit within us. We all contain every element that exists anywhere in any being. So too, each one has all the powers that exist anywhere in himself, though latent. We are all of the same source, all parts of the great whole, all sparks and ray from the infinite spirit or the absolute principle. The second principle is buddhi, or the acquired wisdom of past lives as well as this one. It is the cream of all our past experiences. The next principle is manas, the higher mind, the real power to think, the creator, not concerned with this physical phase of existence, but with the spirit and the acquired wisdom. These three principles together make the real man, the Atma, Buddhi, Manas. And these three, each one of us, is in his inner nature. Our lower manas is the transitory aspect of the higher mind. That is, the portion of our understanding, our thoughts and feelings addressed to the life in the body. But if our thinking faculty is concerned only with the personal self, only with the body, the powers which reside in the triad, the real man, and the acquired wisdom of the past cannot force themselves through their cloud of illusion. Lower manus is the principle of balance. It is placed It is the place from which man in a body either goes up higher up towards higher nature or down towards his earthly nature, made up of desires pertaining to sensuous existence. Life about us is throwing its impressions and energies upon us all the time. We are constantly subject to them and connected with them by our ideas, our feelings, and emotions, so that there's a constant turmoil going on within the inner mind, which makes a barrier to absolute calmness and concentration. True concentration leads to the gradual building of the astral organs within us until the completion of effort we have an astral body with all the organs of the physical completely synthesized, and we are beyond the vicissitudes of physical existence. We have the power of action of the astral body. And Crosby goes on to say is that the height of concentration is possible within us, but not on a selfish basis. About a few years ago, a series of articles was published in Theosophical Movement that provided several steps or several aspects in aid to practice concentration. So here we have a few listed here. The mental preparation is the first step, followed by the gradual removal of lower tendencies, leading to subjugation of the lower self. And it's really important to keep in mind that the disciple's greatest enemy is his own lower self. This is followed by the development of the inner mind, which is called the astral body, and then awakening of the spiritual will. So we'll touch on a few of these aspects. So the first aspect is mental preparation. The disciple has to get rid of the false notion that the energy that feeds his desires can ever be sublimated or be permanently preserved. The fury and the fire of the lower passions cannot be turned inwards nor stored up until the energy is turned towards higher and holier objects. The muddy stream of the animal soul cannot be turned into the crystalline waters of life. The presence even of a mere shadow of personal desire within the precincts of the sanctuary, which is being laboriously prepared, is sufficient to destroy that equilibrium which can alone aid in the invoking of the divine harmony. It's only when the power of desire is slayed beyond resurrection, under the force of an unflinching will, and the recognition of the personal self is destroyed, that the union within the higher self can take place. The effort must be at the eschewing of the lower and the garnering of higher forces at each phase of activity. The consciousness implicit in such effort cannot be relaxed, nor is it susceptible to suspension through the dark hours of mind, body, and soul. The second important orientation is based on the rules of chelarship. The rule is that Upsaka, while studying, must take care to be united as fingers on one hand. Thou shalt impress upon the minds that whatever hurts one should hurt the others, and if rejoicing of one finds no echo in the breast of others, then the required conditions are absent, and it is useless to proceed. Unbrotherliness, immorality, instability, a leaning towards the phenomenal and the selfish, all these create forces and generate nerve currents that usurp and occupy places which normally should be reserved for the enthrallment of the spiritual. So until these practices and planes are won back and cleansed, the effort to invoke goodwill produce only evil. Those who rush into spiritual practices without first going through the purificatory process will find that the efforts end in frustration, which sooner or later can result in cessation of all efforts. It's really a big part of preparing ourselves mentally is purification. And the Voice of Silence also says in the third fragment that before you embark on the path of divine virtues, we have to purify our minds. So the next aspect is the gradual removal of lower tendencies. This is started by an implicit recognition of undesirable tendencies. Theosophy teaches that undesirable traits have no power over the disciple except through violence, anger, envy, untruthfulness, covetousness, and any other tendencies of lower mind. The removal of these traits is not possible until the student is earnest. Any regret or loss of a beloved object or pleasure will hinder the progress. Hence, the commencement of the process leading to removal of traits of the lower mind is mandatory, and there are no exceptions to the contrary. Cultivation of divine virtues is critical to the progress, and any thought running to the contrary must be expelled. A useful practice is the cultivation of an opposite virtue, such as replacing anger with love, violence by brotherliness. Once a battle with the lower self is commenced, it cannot be abandoned until victory is achieved or life is drained out in the process. And the Voice of Silence highlights this process in two verses, and it says that no effort in this direction is ever lost. It says, "Yea, if he conquers, nirvana will be his, and if he fails, even then he does not fall in vain. The enemies he slew in the last battle will not return to life the next birth that will be his. The holy germs that sprout and grow unseen in the disciple's soul, their stalks wax strong at each new trial. They bend like reeds but never break, nor can they ever be lost. But when the hour has struck, they blossom." So this is really important for us to focus, and also there's a lot of this optimism saying that even if we fail initially, every progress we made in the right direction is never lost. Third aspect is subjugation of the lower self. The primary objective of the aspirant must be to stifle the voice of earthly appetites. This is through the recognition that his greatest enemy is his lower self. The cultivation of a genuine feeling of brotherliness saves the light on the path. Before you attain knowledge, you must have passed through all places, foul and clean alike. Therefore, remember that the soiled garment you shrink from touching may have been yours yesterday, may be yours tomorrow. And if you turn with horror from it, when it is flung upon your shoulders, it will cling the more closely to you. The self-righteous man makes for himself a bed of mire. Abstain because it's right to abstain, and not because you should be kept clean. And this is really an important teaching of Light on the Path. Further, cultivation of deep faith in teachings of Theosophy and the Masters is a really important step in subjugating the lower self. So the fourth aspect is the development of the inner man. The practice of concentration, if kept up unremittingly, leads to the gradual and full development of the inner being or the astral man. We will touch upon this briefly. For a student who has not commenced the practice of concentration, the astral man is inextricably entangled in the body, cell for cell, fiber for fiber. If the practice of concentration is kept up unremittingly, the cloudy mass begins to gain coherence and to shape itself into a body with different organs. We are taught in Theosophy that development of this inner man is required for further spiritual progress. And hindrances to this development are anger, envy, vanity, and fear. We must strive to dwell upon the need for calmness, removal of personal idea, cultivation of poverty of the heart and fearlessness through the acquisition of spiritual knowledge. We should stress here that the development of the astral man should not be the motive behind the culture of concentration. And finally, we notice that uh, the, uh, the practice of concentration leads to gradual awakening of the spiritual will. It leads to fixity of mind motivated by higher altruism. And some ways to pursue that are performance of duties, as is taught in Bhagavad Gita, rigorous study and practice of theosophical teachings, offering assistance to fellow students and disciples, and reverting to a contemplation on Ishvara or spirit in all free moments. In other words, any moment where we are not reading or performing our duties, we should strive to contemplate on our higher self. And we will conclude this talk with this statement from Judge that when concentration is perfected, we are in a position to use the knowledge that is ever within the reach, but which ordinarily eludes us continually. And with that, we'll open up the floor for comments, questions, discussion. Thank you very much. Herb? Yeah.
I inherited a book from a fellow student who has left our body now, and it's about what to focus on in meditation, concentrating. It says becoming mentally vacant. Becoming mentally vacant or staring at a physical object is not real meditation or concentration. So we have to think about higher thoughts, higher ideas, like for the good of all and things like that. That's kind of hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the idea of staring at a spot on a wall doesn't help you either.
Yeah, and answer to your comment, the masters have said that all we can do is try. It's really difficult to go through meditation or contemplation or concentration is backed up by altruism, by service to others, and less than personal progress. Creating a feeling of unselfishness by devoting ourselves to our duties, as is taught in the Gita, and just purifying our mind. Expelling thoughts of ill will, of anger, of envy, of covetousness. All those are necessary before I can even embark on the process of meditation or concentration. And that's one reason why in the Voices of Silence, on the third fragment, it says, after he talks about the 7 divine principles, 7 divine virtues, paramitas, before you make the first step, before you cross the first portal, you have to purify your mind. And that preparation is really important. And Mr. Judd says that just performing your duties, or as Krishna says, the yoga is the right performance of duties, is the first step and really prepares us, either in this life or in a later life, to really truly embark upon concentration meditation. And H.P. Blavatsky in the Key to Theosophy says that we may not attain full meditation in one life, but we can prepare our mental baggage so that when an opportunity arises in the future life, we are ready for it.
You mentioned duty a few times, and Mr. Judge said duty is a royal talisman,
Mm-hmm.
which really means that that is the process we can go through to achieve what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I think he says in the same article that pursuing duties without any mental attachment. Krishna says throughout the Gita to perform duties for the higher self without expecting any rewards, any personal progress. So really performing and Mr. Crosby also says that it's the small duties that we should focus on. and not let them slide by, and perform them without any attachment. And by doing that, we are elevating a manas onto a higher plane. It can be performance duty to a family, to a work, to a neighbor, to a fellow being, to a fellow theosophist. Every little duty done with a higher focus is important, and that leads. And that's one reason why, as the judge says, right, that duty is the royal talisman. If performed correctly, it itself will take us to the final goal.
Mhm. So by helping others, by focusing on helping and teaching, we're also helping ourselves and everything around us.
Absolutely. I think, I think one of the masters said that the first objective of theosophical life is altruism, higher altruism, service to others, giving more to others, taking less for yourself. I think it's a self-sacrifice service that has to be a common thought and focused on at all waking hours of the day. How can we serve others in any way we can in station of life? That itself is meditation. That itself is contemplation, concentration.
Well, we have to unlearn a lot of things I think we've learned
Yes.
to get to where we're going to working on these what I would think of as abstract ideas, and also in service to others. That's not an abstract, but I'm talking about just the ideas of service to others, and what we're doing when we're trying to meditate. We're not necessarily out there interacting at that time, but we're thinking about those higher thoughts that you talked about. It is it's hard to focus on that and stay focused on that. So I think that's why they say try to concentrate for 1 minute, 5 minutes, and so forth. And it's hard to even to do that length of time, and then try to extend it to 24 hours, I guess, eventually.
Yeah, I think that's why Mr. Judge calls it meditation and life's meditation. And we can extrapolate and say concentration at one point in time and life's concentration. So, as if every action is performed from the view of the higher self, Krishna, that is a good start. It then removes the need for reward, removes the need for recognition, for any self gain. Yes.
I think it said in the reading that you put everything on Krishna, which is in the reward, the desires, and things like that. You you let him be responsible for that. You just, it's your job to do, and not to think about what the results are going to be.
Exactly.
With respect to reward and things like that,
Exactly. And by doing that, we are invoking the higher manas. We have a choice. We do either we pursue our duties using a lower manas, or we do the same duties using the higher aspect, higher manas. And that's what Krishna says in that reading, is to place all your works, all your thoughts, all your ideas on him, on Krishna, on the higher self, which is our true self. Because in the truest sense, we are all Krishnas, we are the higher selves. It's illusion, as Voice of Silence says, that the lower mind is a creative illusion. So we have to destroy that first. We have to at least paralyze that first, so that we can really grasp who we really are. Yes, Gavin.
It's interesting that you said that duty could take us all the way, because I think there's a part in some of Mr. Judge's writings where people ask, should I become like a disciple and, forsake my family duties, or should I switch my job because my career is kind of an undesirable thing? And he always says, no, because all the lessons you need are within the sphere that karma's kind of placed you, or you've placed yourself due to your choices and your resulting karma. And I often return to that because people naturally want to do something proactive, but sometimes it's hard to just kind of, maintain the course that you're on without, you want to make a substantial change. So I don't know if there's a way to I guess embarking on meditation can be like a proactive thing to do. But what advice is there to, keep up your courage, even if it's not, even if it's just kind of following your same duty?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Judd says that all you can do is try. I think that's even the masters said the same thing. And in the voice of the silence, it says, right, that no effort in the right direction is lost. So even though you may not have several hours a day, we can sit and contemplate and read Theosophy. Every duty is an opportunity, because we call it up. The real us, we call on the duties. It doesn't assign those randomly. As Mr. Judd says, that with every awakening of incarnation, your entire life is placed before you, and this is what you asked for, and it's placed before you in relation to the karma that the ego can handle. And so that itself, performing every duty and looking at a family in the light of what's taught in the Gita, that's itself the life's meditation. Studying, H.P. Blavatsky also says that you can study all you want to, but if you don't put it into practice with everything you perform every day, it's almost no use. So, study and practice, studying Theosophy and then practicing it, again, with every duty that's been placed before you, not running away from it, because it's still there. Either you discharge your karma and get done with it and move on, or you try to escape it, but it's still there. You have to, the karma is a great balance, right? It's action. It's like, if you're an accountant, you have a credit and a debit. You have to kind of cancel both out and so discharging karma is along those lines. And again, and as Damodar says that, it's you just can't have focused on meditating for a few minutes a day and then forget about it for the rest of the day. But if on the other hand you have, contemplated or meditated on a higher thought, in the morning or sometime during the day, and you carry that through every action throughout the day, that is usually beneficial to you and the people around you. Yeah.
You mentioned try.
Yes.
It says it over and over again. You gotta ever keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
Steadfastly trying, and all kinds of things about trying is in the literature.
Yes.
So that's very important.
Yeah. Caroline?
Yeah, in Western culture, I heard about the term the flow, and it's a term coined by a contemporary psychologist. The name I don't recall, and it's difficult to pronounce. It's an European who I think practices in the US. I don't know if you heard the flow. It means like any person can, upon concentrating but in doing, for example, if you're doing art, writing, or playing an instrument or doing a sport, if you're concentrated, you enjoy the activity so much that you lose the sense of time and location. And while you were doing your talk, I was thinking of the flow, and I experienced it myself in like while I was painting and drawing. But listening to you again, I think the difference, because I was wondering what would be the difference between this theosophical explanation and what people experience, like automatically if they're concentrating and enjoying their activity. I think it's the flow just stops at the lower mind, whereas with the concentration and meditation and practicing and altruism, compassion, love, and like you said, get rid of the lower tendencies, tries to go beyond the lower mind. Is that so? Is that comparison okay?
Yes, I think absolutely. And earlier this month when we had a talk on meditation, one of the outcomes of meditation is a feeling of goodwill towards all, feeling of brotherliness. And it really, when you look at a word concentration or even meditation, meditation can be meditating on making money, right? Can acquiring wealth and all the desires. That's lower meditation. True meditation is focusing on our true selves, the real man, the Atma, Krishna, and then conducting all your actions throughout the day along those lines. So, yeah, so the flow can be, as I said, the flow can be through the lower manas, or the flow can be through the higher manas. It's the choice is ours to make. But again, coming back to Herb's comment on trying, what it seems what they really mean by trying, Blavatsky, Mr. Judge, the masters all said the same thing. All you can do is try earnestly. What they mean is that every earnest try in the right direction is never lost. In hustle bustle of daily life, we don't feel that. We don't feel that that's become and part of an interior progress. And the masters have said that too often disciples or would-be disciples don't even know the true progress. Just go about doing it and don't focus on results. And I think that's really important. It's heartening to know that every step in the right direction, every step on the spiritual path is never lost. You can never go back. You can only go forward, and that's really important to keep in mind as we strive to study, to understand, and then to practice. Because as Earl pointed out, we have to unlearn a lot of things. If we have accumulated a lot of junk, many lives, right? We have to kind of clean a household, do spring cleaning, so to speak, and it takes time. But we have to do it, and just doing that is taking the right step in the right direction. Yes.
So the idea, if to be universal in all of our thoughts and all of our actions, and sometimes we have to separate out because not separate out, but being universal as well as particular. It's kind of tough to do, but once you have achieved that, don't you kind of drop that lower mind, the selfish part of you, and then you start thinking about the higher thoughts all the time.
Yeah, there's a term used in Theosophy which says resist without resisting. So, it's turning a focus to something interior, to a higher aspect, and not really trying to trying to fight the lower self by fighting it, but trying to slowly disentangle yourself by just focusing on the higher. Something on the light on the path, it says that focusing on it, just on your mind on eternal thought itself, will have the lower self slowly fall away because it cannot survive there. for a lower self to really grow and is us feeding on lower thoughts. But focusing your mind on higher thoughts itself will slowly peel away all lower tendencies. There's something else that Mr. Judd says in his letters, and I talked the talk a few weeks ago. It says, this is what Mr. Judd says on practicing benevolence towards all. It says, I'm not separate from anything. I am that which is. That is, I am Brahma, and Brahma is everything. But being in an illusionary world, I am surrounded by certain appearances that seem to make me separate. So I will proceed to mentally state and accept that I am all these illusions. I am my friends. Then when I went to them in general and in particular, I am my enemies, and I felt them all. I am the poor and the wicked. I am the ignorant. These moments of intellectual gloom are moments when I am influenced by those ignorant ones who are myself. All that is in my nation, but there are many nations, and to those I go in mind. I feel and I am them all, with what they hold of superstition, or wisdom, or evil. All is myself. Unwisely, I was told about to stop, but the whole world is Brahma. So I went to the Devas and Asuras, the elemental world, that too is myself. After pursuing this course a while, I found it easier to return to contemplation of all men as myself. So really thinking us removing the feel of separateness. I think that should be the first step, and really saying, okay, I'm all, and so that that's a good advice Mr. Judge gives in one of his letters. Yes.
Yeah, it seems like the effect from doing that wouldn't be to get rid of anything, but to transmute it, draw the the lower to the higher.
Yes.
Sort of.
Exactly, and I think one of the Dhammapada says, raise the self by the self. So we are raising a lower self with the aid of higher self. And and even general feelings as senses. Our senses are touch is just to touch, but not necessarily to like or dislike, right? So I think really to have that understanding is important.
So we can go on doing basically the same things, except change our attitude of the mind, if you will, from the separateness to the universal.
Exactly. I think Blavatsky says, right, that the real battle is in the mind. It's not necessarily running off to the forest or the monastery and being separate, but being in the world but not of the world. Right? That is the attitude we should embrace.
The battle of the mind is a student this past too kept saying that the greatest of all wars is that internal war. It's what the Bhagavad Gita talks about.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, any more? Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
I think being in the world but not of the world, or whatever your particular situation is one of the most useful pieces of advice there is, because it might be in the workplace, it might be in a social scene, it might be in your financial situation, and it's so universally applicable and so easy to forget and overlook.
Yes.
But it has so much depth to it when you really examine that idea. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think Bhavani Shankar was one of the disciples of the masters, and he said one way to study Gita is to follow the mental abnegation with everything you do. And again, and it really it ties in with what Mr. Judd says, that we have to accept our appointed station in life and perform those duties as the higher self. And hence, so we are in the moment, but not of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're running past noontime. Any questions or comments?
Just that we have to remember that we shouldn't have any attachment to the results or being in concentration or meditation and forget about the results.
Yes.
We are in a journey and we shouldn't be concerned about the progress. That's the message I'm getting from your talk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think one of the paramitas says, right, to balance thought and action and leave nothing left, no karma. So, and one way to do that, exactly as you said, is to perform your duty and not expect any result and not look for result.
Mhm.
And by doing that, you have left karma alone. So,
Mhm. But by expectations, we're talking about personal expectations.
exactly, exactly.
So we have the desire for the world to change for the better.
Yes,
Is that a little different?
that's
Because
different because you're wishing well for all your fellow beings.
Mhm.
You're not wishing for something for yourself. Even though you're committing a good act, you're not wishing for yourself. You're wishing for someone else.
thank you.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's a
Seems
good
like,
frame of mind. Now, go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah.
oh, it just seems like that would be a really good exercise is to every day wish something good for somebody else and then increase that circle. It could be for a person or a group or just like try and make that part of your concentration every day is to purposely think of others.
Yeah. Exactly. Purposely and consciously think of others. Think of brotherhood of man. That's one of the first objectives of Theosophy is to really, and really by doing that, you gradually invoke a feeling of oneness towards all. It's hard for us to feel one with everyone because we are still so embedded in a lower self. But just exactly as Kathy said, just constantly wishing well for others, little by little, starting with your inner circle and expanding. That in itself, really kills out the feeling of separateness.
Mhm.
Yes.
One last
Yeah.
thing. I don't know if you ever saw that movie about Mr. Rogers.
Yes, I did.
He was like a theosophist,
I
but
think,
he actually would make a physical list of the people, at least in the movie, he was portrayed as making a list of the people he knew in his life that were going through a difficult time. And he would like recite their, I want to thank so and so and wish them this, whatever it was that and it was portrayed in the movie and it was a simple thing, but it was so powerful in some ways to see somebody doing that. He'd like write them down. He'd just make a list,
yes, yes,
every day go through it.
absolutely. And it goes along with what Mr. Judd says that, or with Theosophy, that the true plane of actions is a thought plane of action. So every thought we have uh, of benefit to others has an impact. We are living in each other. We are not isolated. Our thoughts are not isolated. That's one reason why Mr. Judge also says in one of the books, one of the discussions he had with Damodar is that we have to watch the avenues of our mind and make sure that only the most beneficial thoughts get into our mind. And by doing that, we benefit others. We are our brother's keeper, right? So every higher spiritual thought we have really could inspire like-minded folks to focus on that. And every lower thought we have also inspires others to commit acts on the lower plane. So, so yeah, absolutely right, Kathy. I think what Mr. Rogers, I watched the movie and I always thought this is Theosophy. We should watch it. A quiet, gentle man, harmlessness is what's taught in Theosophy, but he had really powerful thoughts, powerful message with everything he did. Yeah.
Mhm.
And really ideal way to impress a younger mind. He directed his series towards children, but we are all childlike. It all of us can learn from that.
Mhm. Well, lots of food for thought here
Yes,
for action.
for action, yeah.
Mhm.
So Herb, what I'll do is I use a ton of articles in this talk. I'll place it on Google Drive for anyone else who wants to read, and because you can't cover, can't go into depth in just 30 minutes, but there's a wonderful article written by Crosby, by Judge, and others, and I'll just place that on a Google Drive.
Thank you.
So anyone can access it. So
Also, your PowerPoints,
yes, I'll send it to you. Yeah,
because I would like to put that on the internet.
sure. I'll do that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Uh-huh. So next week we're going to go to some at least one or two of us will go to the lodge, and you'll be in charge of recording there, right?
Yes, I'll take care of that.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording now, and I think thank you very much for all your comments. I'm going to stop recording.